Suppose your liver glycogen is full. Your muscle glycogen is also fully loaded. 30 minutes before training, you consume glucose. What happens next? Does your body store that glucose while simultaneously burning glycogen? Does it use the drink first and save muscle glycogen? Can a weight gainer containing maltodextrin provide even better energy? And because carbohydrates reduce reliance on amino acids, could glucose or maltodextrin also reduce the ammonia produced during exercise? The real answer is not glucose is burned first or everything becomes glycogen. Your body can absorb glucose, burn circulating glucose, release liver glycogen, break down muscle glycogen, synthesize new glycogen in less active fibers, and oxidize fat, all at the same time. Today, we will follow one dose of glucose from your intestine to your muscles and compare pure glucose, maltodextrin, and weight gainers. We will also investigate whether pre-workout carbohydrates can reduce exercise-related ammonia. What glycogen actually is. Glycogen is the body's storage form of glucose. Instead of keeping thousands of free glucose molecules inside a cell, the body connects them into large, highly branched glycogen particles. This allows glucose to be stored compactly and released rapidly when energy demand rises. Glycogen is stored primarily in the liver and skeletal muscles, but these stores perform different jobs. Liver glycogen helps maintain blood glucose between meals, during an overnight fast and throughout exercise. The liver can break glycogen into glucose and release that glucose into the circulation. Muscle glycogen is local fuel. Muscle has little meaningful glucose 6-phosphatase activity and therefore cannot efficiently release glycogen-derived glucose back into the blood. Glycogen stored in your quadriceps primarily fuels your quadriceps. It cannot simply be exported to your chest during bench presses. This means total muscle glycogen can be relatively high while one repeatedly trained muscle group becomes locally depleted. Liver glycogen often ranges around 80-120 grams in a well-fed adult, although body size, diet, fasting and training can change this substantially. Total muscle glycogen may range from approximately 300-600 grams or more. A large carbohydrate-loaded endurance athlete may store considerably more than a smaller sedentary person. Glycogen also holds water. This is why body weight often increases rapidly during carbohydrate loading, without representing an equivalent gain in fat. Can glycogen really be completely full? The word full makes glycogen sound like petrol inside a rigid tank. Biology is more complicated. Different muscles, and even different fibers within the same muscle, can contain different glycogen concentrations. Glycogen also exists in different subcellular locations. Some particles are located near the muscle cell membrane, some between myofibrils and others close to structures responsible for contraction and calcium handling. When muscle glycogen is already high, the activity of glycogen synthase falls and additional storage becomes slower. When glycogen is depleted, the muscle becomes highly receptive to glucose. Exercise activates glycogen synthase, moves GLUT4 glucose transporters toward the muscle cell membrane, and increases insulin sensitivity during recovery. Therefore, glycogen storage behaves more like a regulated warehouse than an open bucket. A nearly empty warehouse accepts deliveries rapidly. A crowded warehouse slows further deliveries, but it may still contain small spaces in particular sections. What happens after taking glucose? 30 minutes before exercise. Pure glucose is absorbed rapidly through the small intestine. Blood glucose rises, and the pancreas releases insulin. Insulin promotes glucose uptake and storage, while suppressing liver glucose output and temporarily reducing fat release from adipose tissue. Then exercise begins. Muscle contraction activates a partly independent glucose uptake pathway. Contracting muscles move GLUT4 transporters toward the cell membrane even when insulin is low. When pre-workout glucose and muscle contractions occur together, insulin signaling and contraction signaling can have additive effects on glucose uptake. The glucose entering muscle has several possible destinations. It may be oxidized immediately for ATP production, converted into glycogen, converted temporarily into lactate used after being transferred between tissues, or stored later. Once exercise creates space inside glycogen stores, the body does not need to store ingested glucose as glycogen before using it. Working muscle can pull glucose directly from the circulation and oxidize it. Does the body burn the drink instead of muscle glycogen? Not entirely. Muscles use multiple fuel sources simultaneously. Their relative contribution depends on intensity, duration, training status, glycogen availability, hormone concentrations, and what you consumed. During high-intensity resistance training, sprinting or intervals, muscle glycogen remains extremely important. Glycogen is already located inside the muscle fiber, close to the machinery that requires rapid ATP. Blood glucose must be delivered through circulation, cross the cell membrane, and then be phosphorylated before it can enter glycolysis. Therefore, even after consuming glucose, active muscle fibers usually continue breaking down glycogen. The drink may increase total carbohydrate availability, maintain blood glucose, and reduce liver glycogen use. Under some conditions, it may also reduce net muscle glycogen utilization, but this effect is not guaranteed. If carbohydrate allows you to produce more power or complete more work, you might use just as much muscle glycogen because your performance increased. That is an important point. Carbohydrate can improve performance without producing dramatic glycogen sparing. Can glycogen be restored while it is being used? Yes, but not necessarily inside the same active fibers at the same net rate. Glycogen synthesis and breakdown are not single whole-body switches. One muscle can break down glycogen while another muscle stores glucose. Even within one muscle, heavily recruited fibers can break down glycogen while less active fibers synthesize some glycogen. A human study investigated carbohydrate feeding after glycogen-depleting exercise while participants either rested or continued low-intensity exercise. Maltodextrin was consumed in both conditions. Researchers observed glycogen synthesis during exercise, but it occurred mainly in less active type 2 fibers. The more actively recruited type I fibers continued experiencing greater net glycogen use. This demonstrates that oral carbohydrate can be used for energy and glycogen synthesis simultaneously. But during demanding exercise, net glycogen breakdown in the working fibers normally exceeds synthesis. Imagine workers removing boxes rapidly from one section of a warehouse, while another team adds boxes to a quieter section. The warehouse is simultaneously emptying and refilling, but the busiest section still experiences a net loss. The major period of net glycogen restoration begins after exercise, when rapid glycogen breakdown falls, while glucose uptake and glycogen synthase activity remain elevated. What if liver and muscle glycogen are already high? If glycogen stores are already high, there is less immediate space and less biochemical drive for additional storage. Some pre-workout glucose may still enter liver or muscle glycogen, particularly in stores that were not truly saturated. However, much of the dose may instead remain available in circulation and be oxidized during exercise. The incoming glucose can reduce how much glucose the liver needs to produce or release. Therefore, liver glycogen may be spared more consistently than muscle glycogen. As exercise progresses and active fibers create glycogen space, glucose entering those fibers can potentially contribute to glycogen restoration later. But the body does not normally achieve complete real-time replacement during intense exercise. If an active fiber breaks down glycogen rapidly, a drink consumed 30 minutes earlier cannot continuously rebuild it at the same rate while maximum contraction continues. Can pre-workout glucose cause a sugar crash? In some people, glucose consumed approximately 30-60 minutes before exercise produces a temporary fall in blood glucose shortly after exercise begins. Glucose raises insulin. Exercise then rapidly increases muscle glucose uptake, while insulin temporarily suppresses liver glucose release. The combination can lower blood glucose below its pre-exercise level. This is sometimes called rebound or reactive hypoglycemia. However, a lower measurement does not automatically mean worse performance. Many athletes experience no symptoms and maintain performance normally. Others report weakness, shakiness, hunger, nausea, or lightheadedness. If this repeatedly happens, possible strategies include taking carbohydrate immediately before exercise instead of 30 to 60 minutes earlier, drinking it gradually during the warm-up, reducing the dose, choosing a slower digesting carbohydrate, eating a balanced meal 2 or 3 hours earlier, or skipping concentrated carbohydrate when it is unnecessary. Anyone with diabetes, diagnosed hypoglycemia, or glucose-lowering medication requires individualized professional guidance. Glucose versus maltodextrin. Glucose is a single sugar molecule. Maltodextrin is a collection of short glucose chains produced through partial hydrolysis of starch. Despite being called a complex carbohydrate, maltodextrin is normally digested rapidly and can produce blood glucose and insulin responses similar to, or sometimes faster than, glucose. After digestion, maltodextrin mainly delivers glucose. Its practical advantages are that it generally tastes less sweet and produces lower solution osmolality than the same concentration of free glucose. This may make larger carbohydrate quantities easier to drink, but maltodextrin does not have a unique pathway that allows it to bypass normal glucose metabolism. It is not automatically better for glycogen storage, strength, or muscle growth. When equal amounts are tolerated, total carbohydrate dose and timing generally matter more than whether the carbohydrate began as glucose or maltodextrin. Is a weight gainer with maltodextrin better? A weight gainer and a pre-workout carbohydrate drink solve different problems. A glucose or maltodextrin drink provides rapidly available carbohydrate. A weight gainer usually contains a much larger mixture of carbohydrate, protein, and sometimes fat. Depending on the product and serving size, it may provide several hundred to more than 1,000 calories. A weight gainer may be useful for someone who cannot consume enough daily calories through ordinary meals, has unusually high energy expenditure, needs a convenient calorie surplus, is attempting to gain body mass, or has limited time between demanding training sessions, but this does not make it superior. 30 minutes before a workout. A large serving can cause fullness and stomach heaviness, bloating, reflux nausea, diarrhea, slower gastric emptying, and an unnecessary calorie surplus. Protein and fat may slow the delivery of carbohydrate from the stomach. That can be useful in an ordinary meal, but it is not always ideal immediately before intense training. If your glycogen is already high and you recently ate, a huge weight gainer shake may add calories without improving performance. A weight gainer is most useful when your problem is insufficient daily energy intake, not because maltodextrin has a special anabolic effect. Does carbohydrate reduce ammonia production during exercise? Potentially, but only part of exercise-related ammonia is controlled by carbohydrate availability. Ammonia during exercise is produced mainly through two relevant pathways. The first involves amino acid metabolism. When carbohydrate availability is low, the body may increase amino acid oxidation. Before an amino acid's carbon skeleton can enter energy pathways, its nitrogen must be transferred or removed. This nitrogen can contribute to ammonia formation and eventually to urea production. Branched-chain amino acids are particularly relevant because skeletal muscle can metabolize them. When glucose and glycogen are readily available, the muscle generally has less reason to oxidize amino acids for energy. Therefore, taking glucose or maltodextrin may reduce the portion of ammonia related to increased amino acid oxidation, especially during prolonged, glycogen-depleted, or fasted exercise. The second pathway is AMP deamination through the purine nucleotide cycle. During intense contractions, ATP is used rapidly. ATP becomes ADP, and two ADP molecules can be converted into ATP and AMP. When AMP accumulates, AMP deaminase converts AMP into IMP and releases ammonia. This pathway helps manage the balance of adenine nucleotides during extremely high ATP demand. It becomes especially relevant during repeated sprints, high-intensity intervals, exhaustive cycling or running, high-volume resistance training, and sets performed close to muscular failure. Glucose or maltodextrin cannot completely prevent this ammonia production. Even when glycogen and blood glucose are abundant, rapid ATP turnover can still activate AMP deamination. Therefore, carbohydrates may reduce ammonia related to low carbohydrate availability and amino acid use, but they cannot eliminate ammonia produced by intense muscular energy turnover. What does human research show? Human experiments have produced an important distinction between ammonia inside working muscle and ammonia measured in blood. One study investigated carbohydrate ingestion during prolonged exercise and found lower plasma ammonia accumulation with carbohydrate. However, carbohydrate did not significantly reduce ammonia accumulation inside the working muscle. That means a lower blood ammonia measurement does not necessarily prove that muscle ammonia production was completely prevented. Carbohydrate may influence ammonia release from muscle, ammonia transport between tissues, clearance by the liver or other tissues, amino acid oxidation, and the balance between production and removal. Earlier research found that carbohydrate loading prevented the exercise-related increase in branched-chain amino acid oxidation and modified the plasma ammonia response during prolonged exercise. Low carbohydrate conditions have also been associated with higher plasma and sweat ammonia during prolonged exercise. Overall, carbohydrate is most likely to moderate ammonia. When initial glycogen is low, exercise is prolonged, the athlete is fasted, carbohydrate intake has been restricted, total energy intake is inadequate, or amino acid oxidation has increased. Its effect is likely to be smaller when glycogen is already high and exercise is short but extremely intense, because AMP deamination may dominate ammonia production. Does maltodextrin lower ammonia more than glucose? There is no convincing evidence that maltodextrin possesses a unique ammonia-lowering property. Because maltodextrin is rapidly digested into glucose, equivalent doses should have broadly similar effects on carbohydrate availability and amino acid sparing. Maltodextrin may be easier to consume in a concentrated drink, but that is a delivery advantage, not an ammonia detoxification mechanism. A weight gainer should not be considered an ammonia-lowering supplement either. The large serving may contain maltodextrin, but it also adds protein and calories that may not be needed. More protein means more amino acids entering metabolism, although an ordinary protein-containing meal will not normally create dangerous hyperammonemia in someone with healthy liver and kidney function. If the goal is to provide rapid carbohydrate, a moderate glucose or maltodextrin drink is more targeted than a huge weight gainer shake. What if glycogen was already full? When glycogen is high, amino acid oxidation is unlikely to be contributing a large percentage of workout energy. Adding glucose or maltodextrin may therefore produce only a small additional reduction in ammonia. It may support blood glucose and reduce liver glycogen use, but ammonia can still rise during intense contractions because of AMP breakdown. The relationship can be summarized like this. When glycogen is low, carbohydrate may reduce amino acid use and moderate ammonia production. When glycogen is high, additional carbohydrate has less opportunity to produce this benefit. When exercise is extremely intense, ammonia may rise regardless because the purine nucleotide cycle responds to rapid ATP demand. Carbohydrate does not block ammonia. It changes the metabolic conditions under which some ammonia is produced. Is exercise-related ammonia dangerous? The temporary rise in ammonia after hard exercise in a healthy person is not equivalent to the severe hyperammonemia seen in liver failure or urea cycle disorders. Healthy skeletal muscle, liver and kidneys normally metabolize and remove the additional ammonia during recovery. The liver converts ammonia into urea through the urea cycle, while skeletal muscle can temporarily capture ammonia in glutamine. The kidneys excrete nitrogen as urea and ammonium. Carbohydrate should therefore be consumed primarily to support energy availability, performance, and recovery, not because ordinary exercise ammonia needs to be medically detoxified. Persistent or severe hyperammonemia is a different medical problem. Confusion, repeated vomiting, unusual behavior, severe drowsiness, seizures or loss of consciousness require urgent medical evaluation rather than carbohydrate or supplement experimentation. How much pre-workout? Carbohydrate is useful. Requirements depend on workout duration, intensity, time since the last meal, body size, daily carbohydrate intake, and gastrointestinal tolerance. For demanding exercise, broad sports nutrition guidance recommends approximately 1 to 4 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram during the 1 to 4 hours before training or competition. The upper end is intended for prolonged endurance events, not a normal gym workout. 30 minutes before exercise, a smaller dose is generally easier to tolerate. Approximately 15 to 30 grams may be sufficient when the goal is to increase blood glucose availability or avoid starting hungry. Approximately 30 to 60 grams may be appropriate before or during longer, harder sessions, depending on body size and tolerance. For prolonged endurance exercise, carbohydrate consumed during the activity becomes increasingly important. Common ranges include approximately 30-60 grams per hour, with higher intakes used during very long events after gastrointestinal training. A typical resistance workout performed after a normal meal may require no additional carbohydrate. A systematic review found that carbohydrate intake is unlikely to improve resistance training performance in a fed state during workouts containing up to roughly 10 sets per muscle group. Benefits become more plausible when the workout is fasted, training lasts longer than 75 to 90 minutes, volume is extremely high, several muscle groups are trained, glycogen is low, calories or carbohydrates are restricted, or another demanding session follows later that day, the best choice for different situations. If you ate a carbohydrate-containing meal 2 or 3 hours earlier and will perform a 1-hour resistance workout, water may be all you need. If you train early in the morning after an overnight fast, liver glycogen has fallen more than muscle glycogen. A small carbohydrate dose may support longer or higher volume training. If you are doing a 2-hour bodybuilding session, 20-40 grams of glucose or maltodextrin before or during training may be more comfortable than a massive weight gainer serving. If you are performing prolonged endurance exercise, planned pre-workout and intra-workout carbohydrate becomes much more relevant. If you need to gain weight but struggle to consume sufficient calories, a weight gainer can be useful after training or between meals. It does not have to be consumed immediately before exercise. If you have another demanding session within several hours, rapid recovery becomes the priority. Approximately 1.0 to 1.2 grams of carbohydrate per kilogram per hour during the first few recovery hours can accelerate glycogen restoration when rapid turnaround is necessary. Can excess glucose become fat? If glycogen is high, the body does not necessarily convert one isolated glucose drink directly into body fat. It can increase glucose oxidation, reduce fat oxidation, and store some glucose later after exercise creates glycogen space. Direct conversion of carbohydrate into fat, de novo lipogenesis, is normally limited under ordinary mixed diet conditions, but increases during sustained carbohydrate overfeeding. Carbohydrate can still promote fat gain indirectly. When carbohydrate raises energy intake and suppresses fat oxidation, more dietary fat may remain stored. The main driver of long-term fat gain is a sustained calorie surplus. A weight gainer makes that surplus easier to achieve, which is helpful when intentional and counterproductive when unnecessary. The final verdict. If your liver and muscle glycogen stores are already high and you take glucose 30 minutes before exercise, your body can use that glucose directly for energy. It may also store a small amount in less saturated muscles, inactive fibers, or the liver. During exercise, some tissues can synthesize glycogen while active fibers break it down. But heavily working fibers will normally use glycogen faster than they rebuild it. Full restoration happens mainly during recovery. Maltodextrin behaves similarly because it is rapidly digested into glucose. It may taste less sweet and be easier to drink in larger quantities, but it is not automatically superior. A weight gainer is better only when you need additional daily calories. It is not automatically better workout fuel, glycogen fuel, or ammonia control. Glucose or maltodextrin may reduce exercise-related ammonia when glycogen is low by reducing amino acid oxidation and supporting carbohydrate metabolism. But it cannot completely prevent ammonia produced through AMP deamination during intense muscular contractions. If glycogen is already high, the ammonia-lowering advantage of extra carbohydrate is likely to be smaller. The smartest question is therefore not, should I take glucose, maltodextrin, or a weight gainer? It is, how long and hard am I training? When did I last eat? Are my glycogen stores actually low? And do I need rapid fuel, or simply more daily calories? Use the smallest effective strategy that supports performance without creating digestive discomfort, or an unwanted calorie surplus. Because the best workout nutrition is not the largest scoop. It is the correct fuel, in the correct amount, for the work you are actually performing.